If you are in the market for a Toro Zero Turn or just a zero turn in general, boy, is this the video for you. And I'll tell you what, in 2024, the frame design changed a ton for the Timecutter and the Titan series. What used to look like this frame right here now looks like what we see in what they're calling the Timecutter Max. And they did the same thing over in the Titan series. And I'll be the first to tell you, whether you buy a Toro, a Bad Boy, a John Deere, a Gravely, whatever it may be, they use a lot of the same transmissions and a lot of the same engines. So for me, what I look at first, like even before brand, there's definitely unique things you're gonna find within the brand of mowers. The very first thing I look at is the transmission on a mower. The transmission on this mower versus this mower are vastly different, and it's so important that you know that as we go through each of these, along with the engine options, the frames, and everything else that comes along with it. So here's what you need to know baseline about mowers. Mowers are made in residential, high-end residential, or if we go all the way outside, which we'll do later in this video, full-on commercial. And trust me, I get it. You can get a 60-inch zero-turn mower for $48.99 over here, or you can spend as much as nearly $8,000 if you move over to this mower. And trust me, you could spend double that amount on a 60-inch mower. So what is it that goes into all this pricing? I'm not only gonna talk about the different mowers, the different features, but also what is the pricing that goes along with each of those mowers. So if we're talking Toro Zero Turns, this right here, this is where I wanna start. So I talked about residential, high-end residential, and then eventually commercial. Toro, their Timecutter series is what I would call the residential. This year, they've got a Timecutter and a Timecutter Max, both being a residential model. Their residential models actually start at a 34-inch, which I'm going to talk about second uniquely, because this is really where I'd start more of a baseline type of mower. And here, what I'm holding in my hand goes over all of the different Toro models that you can possibly choose from. Could be a really great buyer's guide for you as you're going through with each of these features and specs I got. Toro's been a company that's been around for such a long time. There's awesome resources. I'm gonna have a link in the description to this as well. So this mower right here, this is a Timecutter 42-inch. This particular model, which they make a lot of different 42s, goes for $32.99. What goes into that pricing is that this one has a stamped deck. If you compare decks, it's actually more uncommon, it seems like, in the industry to even have stamped decks, but Toro does give you one option to kind of give you a little better price point type mower. A stamped deck is something that goes into a big press, and typically if you look at the edge of this deck, kind of leaves a bit of a curled edge. It's a thinner deck when it's stamped like that. If you look over to something like this, this is a fabricated deck, and you'll notice that that has more of a squared off edge and extra reinforcement on it versus this kind of lipped, curled edge. So that's what makes this, it's a thinner piece of metal typically. When you're doing that, it makes it more affordable. It's easier for this to rust out. It's easier for it to dent. So it's always preferred to go here, but maybe just from a price point perspective, you'd rather kind of be in this realm, and it definitely is a viable option. Just got to be a little bit more careful about where you're going. Are you leaving it outside? Make sure you don't hit anything. This can last for a long time if you take care of it, but you definitely got to be more careful. What are the transmissions like? And here's the deal about transmissions. These companies use a lot of different brands. There's Hydro Gear transmissions, there's Tough Torque, there's Parker. There's a lot of different makers of these transmissions. The transmissions are what helps make things move, right? So the different transmissions that you get determine the speed that you go. And that's super important when you think about mowers, because you don't want to be out there for 5 hours, right? The bigger transmission you have, the faster it goes. The bigger engine you have, the better it's going to cut the grass. So Toro mostly uses Hydro Gear transmissions. So for Hydro Gear, you can go as low as a ZT 2100 transmission or all the way to $10,000 to $15,000 machines with a ZT 5400 transmission. I talked about the transmission being really important. This has a ZT 2100 transmission. That's the smallest transmission that you can get that's gonna get you into the zero turn realm. So I talked about the importance of the transmission. I talked about this deck. everybody wants to talk about the engine, and it's totally viable to talk about engine options. So let's talk about engines, what you need to know. I think it's a lot more prevalent to be thinking about that engine option right here at the 42, because what I see really commonly on 42-inch mowers is you'll see a lot more single cylinder engine options. When you see, this is a valve cover right here on a mower. When you see a valve cover on one side and the other, that means it has 2 cylinders. Twin cylinder, that means that it's going to have more power. If one side goes down, you still have the other side working for you. So it's always good to get a twin cylinder engine, and usually it's only offered in those smaller machines, the single cylinder. So I really recommend that you do that. You get a twin cylinder. So they have Kohler engine options at this level. They have this Briggs & Stratton. You can go less and be closer to a $3,000 price point if you get the stamped deck and a single cylinder Briggs & Stratton engine. But I think it's worth spending a little bit more money and getting something that's a twin cylinder engine. So kind of keep that in mind as you're looking at mowers. So come with me, let's keep learning about these Toro Timecutters. Uniquely, I would call this a higher end machine, a 34-inch Timecutter versus the 42. Why? Well, they make this, yes, it's a time cutter, and that means it's residential, but they make this with the commercial person in mind, because they made a 34-inch deck. They were thinking of that commercial person trying to get between the back gates. Sometimes that back gate is 36 inches, 40, and you need something that's smaller than the 42, and that's what they did. So even though this is a smaller deck, they're giving you a fabricated deck, which is heavier duty, right? Also, what's unique to this 34-inch model is this has a very thick rubber chute. If you'll notice on all the other Timecutter models, they have this plastic chute that can very easily break. It's a little more brittle. You got to be a lot more careful with that. It's definitely always better if you can get this rubberized grass chute. So even though this is a smaller deck, they actually have this price point a little bit higher than that 42 I talked about. It's actually the same as the fabricated deck 42-inch. This one right here is $34.99. Part of the reason that price point jumps up a little bit is, number one, yes, it does have the fabricated deck. This feature right here is also really nice. They've had to narrow the frame back here and get you smaller tires, but they do give you a twin cylinder engine option again. So because they give you a couple other upgrades with this, that price will go up just a little bit, but it's, again, a nice option if you are a commercial guy. But really, even if you're not a commercial guy, maybe you're the homeowner with the small back gate, and that's where this could really come in handy. Now you gotta be watching this video because you are curious, what is new that Toro is doing in 2024? These frame designs, these mowers that I've already talked about, they had them in 2023. They're bringing them back in 2024. But what they changed is the 50-inch models and up. The 50-inch models of the past, the 54-inch models, the 56, it had this exact same frame design as what you're seeing on the 42s that they kept on the smaller machines. But they completely changed the design on the 50-inch models and up. So this is actually a 54-inch model that Toro has. The Timecutter Max is what they're calling it. And depending on when you're watching this, they still have a Timecutter in a 50-inch, a 54, and a 60 for the 23 models that they're calling just a standard Timecutter. So if you want to get some big savings, they've got a lot of big rebates to try to move all the 2023 product, but everyone seems to be really liking the new frame design, and I like it for a few different reasons as well that I want to go over. But I'm also going to talk about, again, I talk about being impartial, right? I want to tell you what I like, what I don't like about the new frame design. So when I saw this for the first time, taking it all in, this has a large tube piece. They used to have these kind of aluminum cast pieces you could take on and off. I never really saw any cases where people are doing that. They made it one design in a nice thick tube piece. I really like that. Another thing that a lot of other companies were doing that Toro finally has jumped on to do, even at the residential, is they give you access to your deck. And like, quite honestly, this piece, this is a really heavy piece of metal. I think this is stout for being something that's residential. So I like that they gave you the access point to the deck there. And then another thing that I really like that they did on this is now they have the deck floating with chains. So it's a floating deck on chains. I could not step on this deck before. Yes, a large 6'8" man, nearly 250 pounds can step on that without that straining now. So that's a huge plus. You could not do that in those before. We've added a number of upgrades that I wish Toro might have put on as a standard actually. Number one, we added an hour meter onto this because no, they're still not making an hour meter standard. I really wish Toro would make hour meter standard even on the residential, because people want to know, when is my break-in oil change? What are the service intervals for my mower? I think it'd be really nice if they, did that. But so we upgraded the hour meter on this. This right here is actually a Titan seat. This is an upgrade. What's standard on the time cutters this year is this seat right back here. Now they've contoured this and they have a breathable hole. I think it looks really nice. But Toro, I wish that you would have put armrests on here. We'll show you on the screen right now what the old time cutters used to look like. They used to have armrests. Now, of course, there is an option. You can get armrests added on here. There's a little bit extra money. But I will say this one right here is a really nice price point mower for a premium product like Toro. Toro is gonna offer you a 3-year warranty on their machines. And so that's a strong warranty. You got nice components that come along with it. And the price point that they give you on the 50-inch models now can go as low as $36.99. They were putting prices more around $4,000 on similar models to this. So the pricing actually got a little bit more aggressive with better features. And another thing that Toro has finally kind of given us is more engine options. What they used to do in certain and select models is only give you certain engine options. So this one has that same Briggs & Stratton engine that we've been talking about, a 22 horse twin cylinder engine. You can get a Kawasaki on this as well. It'll cost you a couple $100 more to get this engine option on here. What also is new, this original mower that I was talking about with Time Cutter, is they did not have a standard 54-inch in the Time Cutter realm. Now they have a 54-inch as a standard. They used to only have the Time Cutter My Ride, which I'll talk about the My Ride that Toro has, but they only had that in their kind of more deluxe version. Now they're offering the 54-inch version with a Kawasaki engine for $39.99. So only $100 more than the Kawasaki that has a 50-inch cut. That's a really nice price point for that larger cut with the Kawasaki engine option. So what else did they change this year? They have this deck dial system. I'm gonna go ahead and sit on here and show you how that works. You can press this with your foot and then you can change to the different height where it will drop. Before you had a lever, if I go back to what that 42-inch, it had a lever to move this up and down. I like that pin system quite a bit more. Also what they lost, what's left in the dust, is they used to have a smart speed control system. I would only call that more useful the first few times you mow, because it limits your transmission speed if you move it to the turtle mode. Quite honestly, you can press the levers a little bit less and it will do the same thing. So really, I think more when you're learning. So they completely eliminated that, which I think, was fine for them to do. So also, when I work my way to the back of the machine, let's look at the serviceability and how open, how much can you get to things on the machine. Now, Toro's known for putting that gas tank right under the seat. That limits visibility a little bit instead of putting it here. But one thing that Toros are known for is they're gonna try to lower the center of gravity as much to try to help you with hillside mowing and things of that nature. So I kind of like that as long as I've got access to everything. And it seems like everything in here is still wide open to be able to work on. There's access points to kind of get, wherever you got to go if you're working on the mower. And this mower right here, this has a little bit bigger transmission. This has the ZT 2200 transmissions. You're going to get that transmission for the 50-inch and the 54-inch Time Cutter Max models. The things that are new about this Time Cutter Max mower is this feature right here. You can spin this and you can very easily adjust where your hands rest, which in my mind, in theory, seems like it'd be very fast, easy to change, and you'd like that. I like that. I think that this is a nice heavy piece. The only kind of little thing to me that I wish Toro might have done a little bit different is this piece right here, this metal piece, it's slightly thinner, ever so slightly thinner than the old arms that they used to have. So I kind of personally liked the feeling a little bit more on that model. Not a huge thing to me, but just something I could kind of feel slightly different. But you know, it does offset that you have a nice piece here to easily change how that adjusts. That's really nice, and there is a ton of variability as far as how much you can move that forward and back. To round out the Timecutter Max series, they have this 60-inch model, same as last year. This has an even bigger transmission. This has the ZT 2800 transmission. And again, I keep mentioning that because that's gonna give you more speed as you go across the ground. What's nice about hydro gear, when you get to this level, it becomes a serviceable transmission. So some transmissions have a kind of container vat that's back in this compartment, and it's very easy to service. I will say that this does not have that external reservoir, but it does have oil filters on the side that you can unscrew and fill in the top cap of that. So I definitely like that you're getting that serviceability. They're doing that because it's a larger 60-inch deck, a little bit larger frame, and so it's really nice that they do that. And I would say the only other noticeable difference here is that it does come standard with that hour meter. I like that they're finally giving that to you. They put a nice Kawasaki engine. Other than that, the frame design, everything else is very similar to what you're gonna see on the smaller Timecutter Max models.